So I know many of you guys might be on your lunch break, so it's best to probably start the presentation now. This will be recorded, so if anybody comes in late, we will also be making this available on our YouTube channel, which is also accessible through the CMLTA website. Okay, so in this presentation, what we're going to do is just kind of go over the process, how we kind of came to the new continuing competency program that will be started this renewal season, so 2025 renewal season here in September. So we're just going to go over the journey so far. So what was kind of done, what led us to the new CCP? So there was many different steps that we took. We didn't just come up with this new CCP program all by itself. We took a lot of different steps to reach to the best one that we think will be both usable for MLTs and beneficial to public protection. So the first thing that we did is we really did some research. So there are many different types of continuing competency programs out there. So not only did we look and compare to other colleges within Alberta, but we also compared to other colleges Canada-wide. And so what we found, there was a bunch of different ways that we could do a new continuing competency program. There were many different ways, such as hourly. So everyone had to complete a certain number of hours each year. Credit-based, where depending on what you did, you gained credits and you needed to hit so many credits per year. There was also interviews being used. So that one would be including the CMLTA meeting with MLTs and kind of interviewing them. There was also practice visits where somebody would come to the MLT and kind of observe them in their work setting. And then there was also examinations. Different kind of examinations, timed ones, multiple choice, stuff like that. We also looked at not only what is being used, but what's actually currently being tested in the research. So we kind of looked at different models of learning, especially adult learning, and kind of what's best for continuing professional development, what really impacts individuals to better their practice. And then we also did a lot of research on the legislation. So we wanted to make sure that what we were legislated for and allowed for us to kind of explore all these different options. And the legislation kind of did let us kind of go wide open and look at all these different options. So not only did we look at across Canada, across Alberta, continuing competence program, but we really wanted to get some perspective from both MLTs and the public. So if you remember the continuing competence program survey, it was released in 2021. So it was a longer survey, and it actually allowed us to kind of take a deep dive into the current feelings of MLTs regarding the continuing competence program. And so with this survey, we actually were able to find that there were 4 main issues with the current version of the continuing competence program. One of it was the model. So a lot of MLTs found it hard to prospectively guess what they were going to be doing in the coming year. They felt like their learning plan was stuck in stone. They had to do it. And then what happens if, say, the conference was canceled, or if that learning opportunity, say that analyzer didn't actually come into the lab? This made MLTs really feel uneasy. So they found that kind of trying to decide what they were going to learn in the future was really tough. Another area was the assessment itself. So MLTs had to go through competencies and enabling competencies, and I believe there were about 46 of them. So it was quite comprehensive, going through each one, And sometimes the assessment was a little bit harder to interpret. What exactly does this mean? How does this apply to my professional practice? And then MLTs also mentioned the competent and developing made it really hard. Well, why am I saying I'm competent this year, but then I'm not not the next year? So that was another kind of issue that was kind of feedback that we really took. Um, Another area was the formatting. So this was in regards to the previous software that we had, and sometimes the current software too. There's a lot of new windows popping up, kind of going out and back in, and it's not very streamlined. And so the formatting wasn't there. And so the last one that we also found through this survey and focus groups actually was the support. So MLTs mentioned that they needed a little bit more support. So how-to guides, what exactly we're looking for, especially if selected for an audit, what exactly is the CMLTA kind of assessing. So this one, we actually got some feedback here from the public here with regarding the presentation. So we were actually able to present an idea of the continuing competence program to council, so the CMLTA council, and it was very positive feedback. Since then, there's been other presentations to the ledge committee as well. And so we've gotten a lot of feedback with the new CCP, and all seems to be very positive. And then we also introduced the new software. And so we worked really diligently with our software engineers to try and make the new CCP as streamlined as possible. So it's not only relatively easy for MLTs to complete, but it also ensures that we are actually doing what the continuing competence should be doing, which is making sure that MLTs are continuing their education and it's actually being applied to their work practice. So that's kind of the journey so far. And so there was a lot of different steps that kind of led to the new CCP, how it was developed. And so hopefully the new CCP is something that will be, again, good for MLTs and especially the public as well. So we're going to go over here. I'm going to introduce the manual. So there's a new manual. Going to go over some resources, and then we have some short videos at the end. If we run out of time, the one video is how to complete a learning plan. So we won't worry about that. That's not very pertinent right now. So that can be shown to you guys at another time, closer to, say, renewal the following year. Okay, so what does the continuing competence program manual look like? And this is for version 5. So this is the new one that's going to be coming into effect in September. At the very beginning, we acknowledge the CMLTA office is located on Treaty 6 territory, and which is the traditional meeting grounds for many Indigenous people. So there's many different Indigenous people, and we really want to make sure that we are honoring the land that we practice on. Not only Treaty 6, but also I believe 7 and 8 as well across Alberta. So within the manual, what you will see, there'll be the introduction, the diving deeper into the CCP, what exactly audit will look like, frequently asked questions, and then a summary at the end. So for an introduction, it's just an introduction into what exactly the continuing competency program is. So the program is a self-directed professional development program that allows the CMLTA to monitor ongoing knowledge, skills, judgments, attitudes, voluntarily undertaken by MLTs. So previously, remember, there was the issue of the model. So we've now changed the model. So now MLTs will be actually completing what is called the CREATE model. So for the CREATE, what that actually means is they will first, it was the CARE model. And first they will create. So when MLTs create, they will reflect on their current or anticipated professional practice environment. They will review the CMLTA standards of practice and code of ethics. They'll complete a self-assessment, and they'll create one learning plan. And this will be based on one of the standards of practice or the code of ethics. Then in the CARE model, we ask MLTs to act. So this is where MLTs participate in learning activities. So one activity must meet the learning plan goal, which is set from the self-assessment. But now the MLTs can actually just add 2 additional planned and unplanned learning activities. So not all of the learning has to be known beforehand. So this helps kind of merge that issue where people found it hard to project what they were going to be learning about. It kind of captures that learning that is still vital and impactful to professional practice. The R in the CARE model is for reflect, so reflection. So this is when the MLT will actually log in their activities. So it's not like previously where they would, MLTs would simply say, I attended a professional event, this is the date, and this is kind of it. It's a little bit more comprehensive a little bit now. There is some actual typing that needs to be done. So they're going to be logging the activities and really reflecting on the learning activity and its impact on professional practice. And then the last part of the CARE model is to enact. So the continuing competency program isn't just for somebody to just learn something and then kind of forget it. We want to make sure that MLTs are actually applying what they learn to their professional practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually ask MLTs to write down an application of the learning to their professional practice. So this is just a brief overview, so in the manual, but we will be going over an example within the program actually a little bit later. So if this is a little bit confusing, don't worry, we're going to go step by step and kind of let you know what we're expecting. Within the manual, you will also see some brief information regarding the Health Professions Act and the Medical Laboratory Technologist Professions Regulation. So throughout, it'll talk about what exactly these are, and then throughout the manual, there'll actually be click options. And so if you require more information, say regarding the Health Professions Act, you'll be able to select here, and it'll bring you to the Health Professions Act. And similarly to the Medical Laboratory Technologist Profession Regulation. So everything should be within the manual that you need, especially if you require more information. Here you will also see links to the CMLTA Code of Ethics and the CMLTA Standards of Practice. So I know we actually released a new version of the Code of Ethics and the Standard of Practice. They are still being reviewed by government, but we're really hoping that they'll be approved soon. And the new CCP program is actually based on the new the new Standards of Practice and Code of Ethics. So instead of the 46 competencies and enabling competencies, there's simply 8. And then the Code of Ethics. So you can either decide to focus on a Code of Ethics, or you can focus on one of the 8 practice standards. Now, legislated standards, those are a little bit different. So that is ones that are kind of the government has mandated. And so MLTs have to follow these ones. So the continuing competency program, ensuring professional boundaries and prevention of sexual abuse and sexual misconduct, and preventing female genital mutilation. So these ones you cannot select as a standard of practice. And so, what exactly does the new CCP look like? So, um, previously it was set out in regulation, but with Bill 46, we were actually kind of able to have a little bit more flexibility. Um, so, we are able to do it now as a continuing competence program standard of practice. So the CCP framework itself is very similar. So we're going to still have members do a self-assessment, still create a learning plan and what's called an activity log. But what each of those means is very different from the old version. So what we're going to do for the self-assessment is we're going to have members actually go through and really kind of look at their own personal professional practice environment. So what we're going to have members do is describe their current, or if they're not working quite yet, or if they're looking at a different position in the future, we're going to have members kind of discuss, well, what is their professional role that they want to really obtain or that they have? Who are their service users? We're going to ask MLTs to really kind of look at that environment and identify some trends, challenges, maybe changes, the things that are happening within the professional environment. Then the MLT needs to only select one practice standard, or they can select the code of ethics that they really want to focus on for that year. And that kind of becomes the what they would like to learn about. So previously, it was very minute and it was very specific. But now we're going to be using the new standards of practice, which were a little bit more broad and applicable to many different MLTs in many different kind of practice settings. So, like I said previously, those legislated standards, so the continuing competency program, the sexual misconduct and abuse, and the female genital mutilation, those ones are not applicable for a as a goal because that is something the government mandates, and so MLTs have to do that and really stay on top of that every year. So then what does the learning plan look like? So the learning plan is a little bit different. So when they select one standard of practice, we're going to have MLTs create one learning plan. So after selecting one of the practice standards or code of ethics, they'll go through and provide detail, kind of why they decided that that particular practice standard or code of ethic was chosen, and maybe and also identify some potential outcomes or benefits that they see might occur. Then they'll go through and kind of look at, well, what are some potential options that I might do to achieve this goal? So this is the exact same kind of ones where it's like attend a professional event, do a presentation, review subject matter. This is all the same as what is being used right now. But what's important is that whatever is selected, so you can select 1 to 3, is not set in stone. So whichever learning activity you end up doing, it doesn't have to match. This is just a place for MLTs to brainstorm. What are some potential options that you know of that are available? And then when you want to complete the learning plan, this is when the MLT just selects, participates in one activity, and then logs it and does that reflection part. So we ask MLTs to provide the necessary information. So date or dates. I know that is something that we changed. So MLTs can actually select more than one date now. We're going to ask MLTs to identify at least one key takeaway from the learning activity, one impact the learning activity had on their professional practice, one impact the learning activity had on their service users, and then one application of the learning in the MLT's professional practice. So there is a little bit more writing, but we do not actually require MLTs to provide certificates or any sort of proof anymore. The answers to these questions are what actually proves the learning occurred and that you're really actually applying it. So yeah, it's actually a free text option. And so we have a minimum number of characters and a maximum number of characters because we want to make sure that MLTs um, provide information, but we're also not asking MLTs to provide an essay here. Um, and so, yes, there will still be audits. And we actually, later on, I'll be going through, and we actually created a rubric for MLTs so they know what we're expecting in answering all of these questions. Yeah, so service users. So service users is a new kind of term that we've introduced when we introduced the new standards of practice and code of ethics. So within the standards of practice and code of ethics, we use this term. And what it actually refers to is individuals who use the MLT services. So this includes patients, clients, students, employees, or any other group. So this can be your colleagues. This can be your patients, that test tube that has that patient tied to it. It can be the student that you are teaching on your bench. And so we use the word service user now just because there are such a wide range of MLTs and who they work with. So we really want to capture kind of everyone and who they work with on a daily basis. So as mentioned previously, there is that activity log. So this actually allows MLTs to complete an activity that's just kind of on the fly. Maybe you just heard about a webinar that's going to happen next week, and you're like, you know what, that'll really impact me in my profession, or it's really applicable. So you want to jump on board and go to that learning activity and have it count. So this is a place where MLTs just simply have to log that this learning activity occurred. So we ask for two more activities like this. So you'll be actually answering the pretty much the exact same questions as you did when you were completing your learning plan. So what was the date? What was the topic? The one new question is, can this be related to a standard of practice? This learning activity. So can it be or which one is it applied to? Is it applied to professional knowledge? Is it applied to confidentiality? Is it applied to the code of ethics? So this kind of makes you reflect on, okay, this learning really impacted me in regards to this standard or this code of ethics. Then the other questions are all very similar. Provide one key takeaway from the learning activity, one impact the learning activity had on your professional practice, one impact on service users. So again, your students, your patients, your colleagues, your clients, those people. And then provide one application. So how are you going to take the information that you learned and actually apply it daily to your professional practice? Um, Yeah, so we're trying to make the form and kind of like on the software as easy as possible for members and with very clear instructions. And we're also going to be providing a lot of resources for MLTs. So, what are we expecting and all that? And I'll be going over that also. I also have a video. So, if you have any further questions, for sure, we'll show the video and then I can definitely help you out with some other kind of examples. So there are some acceptable activity guidelines. So what's important is the MLT may use the same standard or code of ethics and the same learning activity, provided the key takeaway, impact on professional practice, impact on service users, and the application are different from the previous year. So we don't want somebody to simply complete um, a safety kind of a yearly safety activity and have the exact same impact and everything like that each year. So we are looking and making sure we're going to verify, especially when selected for an audit, is this the exact same thing that you did the previous year? Because the continuing competence program is really to continue, not to just remain competent. And so we really want to make sure that MLTs are taking advantage of new learning opportunities. So that is one of the guidelines that we expect MLTs to do. And then we also expect MLTs for the learning activity to not just be a part of a regular work activity. So, reviewing a standard operating procedure for a process that outlines a regular work activity, again, doesn't really constitute continuing competence and continuing learning. So, but if, say, a new analyzer is coming in and there's a new SOP that the MLT must learn, then of course that is something you are continuing your learning and your education. So then it would be approved and accepted. We just want to make sure that MLTs are continuing their education, not just remaining competent. So no, we're not logging time, because especially with adult learning theory, something that can take 15 minutes can be just as impactful as something that took a day-long seminar or something like that. And so what we're actually really looking at is kind of the content of what you learned and how you're going to be applying it. So we're not going to be requiring how long you took for this activity. So now I just want to introduce the timeline. So what is this going to look like for you guys? And me as well, because I am an MLT as well. So the 2025 renewal season will open in September. So what MLTs will do is they will complete their learning plan and their activity log from the previous year with the exact same format that we have used. The only thing that will be changing in September is that self-assessment. So during the self-assessment, you won't be going through the 46 different competencies, enabling competencies, all of that. This is where you will actually be looking and reflecting on your professional practice environment. And again, I'll show you what that will look like in the upcoming video. But you'll just be going through answering those questions and then selecting one standard of practice or the code of ethics, and then kind of thinking about drafting ideas on how you kind of want to reach that goal. Between September and December of the next year, that is when you'll participate in the learning activities. So this is the exact same as what you're doing right now with the current CCP version, version 4. So version 5, you'll still participate in 3 different learning activities. But in 2026 renewal season, you'll be completing the 2025 learning plan. So that's logging one activity that met the learning plan goal, one of the 8 standards of practice or the code of ethics. And then you'll be adding a minimum of 2 supplemental activities that were either planned or unplanned. We're not saying that if you know something that you're going to learn about, for sure you can add that. But we really want to capture also that kind of surprise learning that was really impactful. And then again, you will complete the 2026 self-assessment. So the process is the exact same as the previous years, where you'll do at renewal the self-assessment and then complete the previous year's learning plan. Just this year, we'll be finishing up version 5 or version 4 learning plan and activity log and doing the new version self-assessment. And then the process continues. So what does this mean for audits? So for audits, they're actually changed a little bit. So what we'll be doing is whatever is provided at renewal is what is going to be reviewed if selected for an audit. So I know in previous years, MLTs were notified and given the opportunity to adjust their continuing competency program, kind of their answers and all of that. But what we actually really want to do is make sure that the program is completed correctly the first time. And so we're going to make sure that MLTs kind of whatever they provide at renewal, that is what's going to be reviewed during audit. And so what also is different is that we've also eliminated the requirement for MLTs for the practice hours audit. And so in previous years, we had MLTs have to complete a form or get their supervisor or their HR to complete a form on how many hours they have worked in the past 4 years, if it's not 900 and all that. We have eliminated that because this is something that you guys do every year when you self-declare, when you renew. And so we're really putting the onus on MLTs to really stay on top of that and staying on top of those 900 hours that need to be done every 4 years. So that's something else that's a little bit different. And then when we do the audit, we will have resources for MLTs. So we have what we're expecting. What does complete look like? What does incomplete look like? And I'll go over that here shortly to really help MLTs narrow down what we're expecting. And again, this is a learning opportunity, especially the first year, couple of years with the new program. We're working with you guys to really give feedback on what we expect, what we don't, because things might have to change a little bit in regards to this. So the audit will be kind of like a communication between the CMLTA and the person being audited in kind of, oh, can we have a little bit more information on this? Can you provide a little bit more information about this? Okay, and then the summary. So again, this just kind of states that the MLTs, you guys are responsible for your practice. And so the continuing competency program is only really one way in which we can kind of help provide or help with that continuing education, but it's not the only way. You guys have a professional responsibility for that as well. There are some frequently asked questions, and I'm sure this part will be changing, especially once launched as well, because it's a learning curve. There's going to be little hiccups, but we really want to make it as beneficial for MLTs and also the public. So some common questions there, but we'll go over, just because of interest's sake, I might kind of run along a little bit quickly here. Let me just take a look. Okay, so we have someone here just asking about, is there going to be a limit? So yeah, so we have it right now where MLTs must add 1 activity that meets their learning goal and then 2 supplemental activities. And so those 3 are the minimum number that are required, but MLTs can also provide additional learning up to 3. So in total, there can be a total of 6 activities being logged, but only the first 3 will be looked at through audit, if selected for an audit. And if there is any issues, then we'll look at the supplemental activities to see if that kind of fixes the issue or something like that. But the minimum number is 3 activities per year. The maximum will be 6. So as mentioned in those surveys and focus groups, there seemed to be a lack of support from the CMLTA. So what we really tried to do with the new version is create a CCP manual that's beneficial to members. So something like with the CCP. Okay, I'm just going to look here. Oh, okay. So this is an often kind of question. So what is the CCP cycle year? So for 2025, so that's what opens in September, we will accept an activity from September 1st all the way, or 2025, until December 2026. Because there is that kind of overlap. Our renewal season actually is quite long. And so it's almost like a year and a half that MLTs get. It all depends on when you renew. And so you'll be required to participate in activity and complete your learning plan before you renew. So if you renew in September every year, your activities need to be between September 2025 and September 2026. I hope that cleared it up. I know that can be confusing sometimes, but yeah, no, well, hopefully it'll all make sense. But you do have until December if you renew in December. But going back, so we're going to be releasing a lot more resources for MLTs. So we have some how-tos. We're going to be creating videos, PDFs, really trying to help you guys know what we're expecting and really kind of breaking it down. We also created a rubric with examples of what is accepted and what is, say, something that's incomplete that may require additional information. And we created a learning activity worksheet here. And so we'll just go through. Previously, we released how-to booklets. And so this will be very similar to what we'll be releasing closer to September. It just goes through step by step how to log in, how to renew, how to complete that self-assessment and all that. Something that's a little bit different is we created this continuing competency activity worksheet, which will be available on the website. So within this, it actually is something that MLTs can print off prior to a learning activity. So say you know that there's going to be a learning activity, say a webinar going on, you can actually print this out prior and you can jot down notes. And so it's something that you guys can keep and really help you when you do find a computer and are able to log into your portal and complete the activity. And it just goes through and asks the exact same questions as it would when completing an activity. So what standard of practice, what is it a code of ethics that's related to, what was the key takeaway, how was this impactful to your service users, stuff like that. As mentioned previously, we are going to be releasing a program audit rubric. So this really lays out what we're expecting in the self-assessment. What would be an appropriate answer? What would not be an appropriate answer that would require some additional work if selected for audit? So it goes through each question in the self-assessment learning plan and the activity log, and it really narrows down what exactly is accepted with examples and what wouldn't be accepted. So things that wouldn't be accepted are things like placeholder content, somebody just randomly clicking numbers or letters, stuff like that. And so, and then also it goes through your activity log. Were the activities different from previous years and different from each other? And were they daily work activities? Because that's also an incomplete. And then, yeah, it just kind of provides answers in what we're expecting for each one. So it goes through each question and really lays out what's required. So now we're just going to go through a video. It's kind of goes through inside the software itself. Here, let me open that up. Sorry. So this is for the self-assessment. So this is what the self-assessment will look like. So it's about a 6-minute long video. So I'll just sit here and we'll watch the video. I don't know if we'll necessarily have time to watch completing the learning activity, but both of these videos will become available on the CMLTA website. I just want to be able to answer some questions as well afterwards. But yeah, so here, I'll press play.
This renewal season will be a bit different. We will have MLTs complete their 2024 learning plans using the old CCP version, but the self-assessment will be the new version with the new standards of practice and code of ethics. The first question in the self-assessment will be for members to provide their current or future potential professional job title. This allows members who are not yet working brainstorm regarding a potential future position and allows working members to reflect on their current position or contemplate if they wish to change focus and/or position within the profession. The next question asks members to describe their professional role. This includes what they do on a daily basis. For example, in the hospital laboratory, I am responsible for testing a variety of specimens such as blood, urine, and spinal fluid. With these specimens, I test them on a variety of analyzers for hematology, coagulation, urinalysis, and transfusion medicine. The next question members reflect on is in regards to the specific practice settings in which they practice. There are a variety of different practice settings for MLTs practicing in Alberta, such as a hospital laboratory, a research laboratory, a classroom, etc. The next question asks MLTs to reflect on their intended service users and identify their specific needs. Remember, the term service users refers to any individual who uses the MLT's services, including patients, clients, students, employees, or any other group. For example, my service users include patients in which I provide the results of biological tests for. These tests are resulted to a doctor or a nurse depending on the status and importance of the results. I also work with other MLTs and assistants which require my open communication and team working skills. The next question asks members to describe the trends, short and long-term, challenges, changes, and/or risks in their practice role, setting, and/or service users that will impact their practice, their competence, and/or their learning needs now or in the future. For example, an MLT may comment on a new analyzer coming into the hospital lab where they work. They may currently feel anxious about the change because they have not fully understood the analyzer and its associated changes within the laboratory. They may want to stay on top of the implementation of the analyzer and the associated policies and processes that will eventually be implemented. The last question brings all the questions together, asking MLTs, based on their service users, the trends, the challenges, their expertise and interests. What knowledge and skills do they need to stay current in their practice? For example, the MLT who previously mentioned the new analyzer coming to their laboratory may identify that sample integrity is really important for them to learn about to ensure they are accepting appropriate samples and rejecting appropriate samples to ensure they are releasing accurate and reliable results to the doctor or nurse providing care to the patient. Now the MLT must select one standard of practice or the code of ethics in which they would like to focus on for the CCP cycle year. When members select one, additional information will automatically populate within their learning plan. For this example, the MLT has selected professional knowledge, and we can see what this means for an MLT. The next question again asks MLTs to answer why this specific standard of practice or code of ethics was chosen. For example, the MLT may really want to increase their understanding in professional knowledge because of the new analyzer coming in. The MLT may comment on the need to understand the new processes, such as specimen integrity, turnaround time, testing methodology, quality control, and quality assurance to make sure that they are releasing accurate results for doctors for interpretation. This new test is vital to patients, and understanding the methodology will help me troubleshoot if I run into any issues. Understanding specimen type, QA and QC will also help decrease turnaround time for patient results. Taking a deeper dive into this analyzer will help myself with my own confidence when performing the test. The last part is for members to determine a maximum of 3 potential activities they may do to complete this learning plan. For example, the MLT may take a formal course, review subject matter relevant to professional practice, and/or share knowledge expertise as a trainer, mentor, or preceptor. Note that what is selected here does not have to be the activity that ultimately achieves the goal. It is okay if the MLT thought they were going to take a formal course, but in the end ended up participating in a committee or focus group. The MLT is now ready to submit their 2025 self-assessment. The self-assessment will automatically lock, but MLTs can review their self-assessment in the My Learning tab within their account. Here, MLTs can provide evidence of learning goal completion and add 2 additional planned or unplanned learning activities. If an MLT has completed more than 1 activity that meets the learning goal and 2 supplemental activities, the program does allow for members to add a max of 3 additional activities. Please note that only 1 activity meeting the learning goal and 2 supplemental planned or unplanned learning activities are all that is required by the program. Up to 3 additional activities will be accepted, but only looked at during audit if there are issues with the other activities.
Okay, so that kind of went through that self-assessment portion, and it kind of quickly went over what it kind of looks like for completing the learning activities. I do have another video, just in the interest of time. I won't show it here today just because I got kicked out, and I apologize for that. But what I'll do is I'll make it available, and we will release e-news for everyone. And it'll have a link to the video as well. That way everybody will be getting it, even people that weren't able to attend today. I know it was during lunchtime. So just going through here, there were some questions. I'll just go back to the presentation. Oh, okay, so yeah, so this is the end. Like I said, I'll make those 2 videos available in what the filling out the self-assessment looks like, filling out the learning plan and activity looks like. If you do have any questions, please reach out to me. I'll go through some questions now as well, but my contact information is here. I will be taking a leave from work here shortly, but we also have Samarli, who is the registration and CCP associate. So if I am not available, you can always reach out to her. That or just email the CMLTA and we'll kind of spread it out to whoever can answer the question. So I'm just looking at the questions here. So these free text descriptions seem very long. Is a bullet form okay? So yeah, so what we actually have set up within the software itself is a specific number of characters. So we're looking for a minimum of 50 characters and a maximum of 300. And so what we actually looked at is what the average number of characters per sentence is. And I believe it was 50. And so we're kind of expecting a minimum of 1 sentence for each answer, but we'll also accept up to the 300, trying to make it concise, but also understandable for somebody who is an MLT or not even an MLT. So we just want to really make sure that we're understanding what happened and what you learned and what you took away. So yeah, so there is that character limit. And then, is there going to be any continuing competence or management? No, so this is just for MLTs who have kind of been approved as members of the CMLTA. So this is only applicable to them that are required to do this. So yeah, so that's the new continuing competence version 5, and that's all that I have. So with the lab technicians, that is something with government as well. So we are only mandated to look at medical laboratory technologists. The lab technicians are not a regulated profession. And so we can only look at members of the CMLTA and mandate for that. Perfect. Looks like there's no more questions, so I'm going to be ending the event. Bye, everyone.